Perma-U University workshop, Intro to Site Design, and as you can see behind me, the introduction to the site design that we're going to be doing is for a large-scale apartment complex in an urban environment. And as always, there's the train in the background, which I'll be discussing later when we're discussing edges in the preliminary part of the site design. This is just an introduction to doing site design, things that you're going to need, and some just really quick overviews of like when you first step on the property and you're walking across the property, what is it that you're going to be seeing and looking for as far as like infrastructure and edges, resources that are immediately available, things that you're not going to want to not incorporate in the design because it's stuff that's already there and as usable infrastructure. The three most important tools that you're going to need for doing any type of preliminary site design is a notebook, a pen, and a pencil. I lost my pencil. I thought I brought it, but I didn't. But you want a pencil with a really good eraser. The reason being is the pen is for recording notes of when you're doing your preliminary interview with the site design, with the client of the site. You want to write down their stuff. You want to have them write down stuff, get them involved, have them incorporated. It's nothing better than to hand them a pen and piece of paper and say, okay, write down what it is that you want and write down what it is that you don't want, so we're not going to waste a lot of time of me trying to remember what it is you say. You incorporate it right there. The reason for the pencil is sketches. If you see stuff on the property that's interesting, you can sketch it in. You can do real quick sketches of the boundaries of the property. You can do real quick sketches of infrastructure that's already there, and with like, for me, I like doing engineering mods, so I'll do a quick sketch and I'll do an engineering mod that I want to do as a permaculturalist, and I can sketch it out, show it to the person, and then make erases and changes, and you'll have a preliminary sketch of an initial design layout. Yeah, what the boss said. So, and then the third tool that you're going to want is your eyes, and your fourth tool is your brain. And those are the two most important tools that you're going to need, because your brain can record stuff regardless of this, based on your confidence level. The site we have behind me is, this here is just behind the main office of a 4-block long apartment complex. This is our flagship site for the Leisure Lawn Cooperative Farm, and the stakes just got upped. We were informed earlier this year, or earlier this season, by the manager that the owner refied it, and now the lender doesn't want anything on the site that can be potential lawsuit. So now we're not only doing a site design for the owner of the building, the manager of the apartment complex, the 1,500 units that are on the 4 blocks and 5 acres of the apartment complex, but we're also doing a site design for a conservative banker who is not going to say yes to things that are going to be really potentially a lawsuit to the bank. So that makes the stakes a little bit, tighter. But these are things that as permaculturalists we appreciate. We love challenges because there's no such thing as a problem, there's only solutions. So it means we need to make a really, really, really awesome design that's informative and is able to be understood by an economist, somebody who's not a naturalist, somebody who's not into gardening, somebody who's not an enthusiast, somebody who isn't just Joe Average. This is somebody who isn't, it's numbers. And so we need to incorporate the economic aspect and benefits of the design into the outcome of the presentation, which over the course of the month of August, we will be doing a series of workshops where we will be going a bit more intensive, and we will actually be doing a design for the purpose of presentation so that we can actually continue on phase 2, which we build the design after presenting it to said banker, manager, and apartment building owner. So, moving on. Here we are on the site. We're already on the site, and the first thing that you want to do when you're on the site is you want to observe. And it's what resources do we have already available to us here on the site. Now, this was freshly cut, so we let this continue to desiccate and dry out. Excuse me a second.
The boss.
Okay, so
In the
stand here
shade.
in the shade. So what we have here is a biomass that's usable for hugel bed after it dries out and is not going to coppice, which is what Dutch elms love to do. We've got a potential raised bed box. We've got some broken up urbanite cinder blocks back there. But the thing that I most importantly see is we have this huge roof line. And that's when you first come onto a site, resources that are available, and yeah, let me back it up here.
That way I got the same picture.
Yeah, try not to lean against the garage. Thank you. It's not
Yeah.
So, resources that are available, and edges and boundaries. So it's what is immediately available to us that we can use and capitalize, and what are our edges and boundaries and limitations. And we've got an alleyway here, we've got a lot of parking lots, we've got sidewalks and footpaths, and it'd be interesting to note how often, what's the foot traffic of those. So, anyway, I had to put the boss in the harness. Where was I? Okay, so resources. We've got that edges and boundaries. Our boundaries are, we got the alleyway, we've got the sidewalks. We look down the alleyway there a bit. We've got fencing, and so we've got carports, and then roof lines overhead. We've got overhead power lines. Those are also a boundary. Like whoever let this tree grow didn't realize how big the tree was going to get, and it's grown into the power lines, which is a hazard. And these are things that you need to think about as a designer. Watch your finger. These things you need to think about as a designer when you're planting trees and you're thinking of wanting to do something as impressive as that big beautiful maple tree there. You got to think about where it is that you're going to be going in the future with the growth of the tree. Like a good way to do it is stick a stick in the ground. And this gets into the further future design, but a real simple method: stick a stick in the ground and run a 30-foot piece of rope off the stick and do a radius, and then do a 50-foot and do a radius, and the 30-foot is your 25-year growth, and your 50-foot is like your 50-year growth. And these are just basic boundary areas to help with the design. Whether or not the tree actually gets that big is dependent upon a whole lot of factors. But it's better to design for a tree that's going to be healthy and long-lived and reach its maximum maturity and then live an additional 50% to 75% longer than its projected lifespan because it's in the permaculture landscape. Oh, all right. Yeah. All right. So, which is, that's the potential. You can have trees live for a lot longer than their actual potential lifespan because of the symbiotic relationship and the biomanagement of the ecosystem by the designer. Okay, so when you're also doing site design, the preliminary opening options for the client is you want to get them involved as much as possible. That is key. Now, with this structure here, it's not just the building owner and the manager is the client, but you have all of the occupants who dwell in the residency here. Because the design that you put in and build is they're the people that are going to deal with it. They're the people that are going to interact with it. They're the people that are going to interface with it. So get them involved. Our plan here is to try to get as many of the kids and people with nothing to do involved in the actual construction of the farm, and then through that they have the sweat equity ownership, and then they get management of the farm. All right. You all better? All right. So we're looking at trying to get them involved with the farm, so that they have ownership of it. And once the design goes in and we walk away, and it's growing food and it's producing food and it's making money, we don't have to worry about it as the designers anymore. We're done. It's a successful design. It's doing what it's meant to do. And there's people, the biological resources available to us in the form of the residents of the apartment are maintaining the environment. Now, if you were on a ranch or out in the country, the biological resources that you would be wanting to come in and maintain whatever it is that you put in would not only be your country neighbors down the road, but you got deer and you got elk and moose and all of that stuff, and it's a different ecosystem. Here we've got the biological resources of a lot of human beings, and where this place is in the middle of a food desert. It's right smack in the heart of a food desert, and the majority of these people have income resources. A fair number of them are considered middle class. They'll have kids, they'll have dreams, they'll have ambitions, but they have to drive. I think when we rode here, I measured it on the bike, and I think it's 2.5 miles to the nearest supermarket, and it's 9.5 unshaded blocks to the nearest convenience store, I believe, or 10. And we all know about convenience stores. Anyway, other parts of site design that we're gonna, think about is, of course, there's all the stuff that you learn in the permaculture design course. The arc of the sun in the summer and the arc of the sun in the winter, and well, you're in an urban environment, so that's a bunch of bunk. I mean, the sun and solar plays a huge thing into the design, but we're in an environment where we can create our own ecosystems. And as permaculture designers, to fail in that stretch of the imagination of pushing outside of what they call the boundaries, but pushing the limits of our technology, our building materials, and pushing the limits of ourselves, we can build whatever. And I know this to be a fact because Sepp Holzer demonstrates it, and I don't preach Sepp because of the hugel beds or all of this other stuff that a lot of people preach him for. I preach him for the stuff that he doesn't get recognized for. Okay, I preach him for the fact that he's growing cherry trees, lemons, limes, oranges, grapefruits at 5,000 feet in the Austrian Alps. That's permaculture design. Okay, that's a permaculture designed ecosystem to cater to that particular biological resource in an environment where that biological resource is not supposed to exist. Okay, so we as permaculture designers can create that infrastructure. Now, he doesn't use big, massive things and greenhouses and stuff like that. He uses nature, and he uses intelligence, and he uses smart design, and he uses simplicity.
He uses big machines.
He uses big machines to move shit.
It's appropriate use of technology.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Margaret. That's appropriate use of technology. He uses big machines, but he's dealing with, 300 acres. He's dealing with a hectare. Okay, we in America, we don't get that luxury of 300 acres. Sepp does, because he's doing ecological restoration, and he's getting support from governments whose environmental policies are in line with what he's doing. And the thing is he started doing what he was doing, and he was getting fined by the government, huge fines, and he continued to do what he was doing because he was making enough money to pay his fines. And guess what? Years later, decades later, he's getting paid by the governments, and he's getting paid by royals of other countries to come in and do ecological restoration, the method that he's been doing with big D9 cat earth moving equipment and tearing shit out and putting shit back, building shit up, and then he lets nature take over. Okay, and but the whole point of the tirade on Sepp is he's growing this produce in an environment that it's not supposed to be grown in, and he's using thermal mass in an appropriate way. He's using water in an appropriate way. There's no greenhouse infrastructure covering these trees. They sit out in the open. And so when we're dealing with the design of something as much of a blank slate as an apartment complex where you've got monoculture everywhere. Yes, you've got flower beds, but they all grow the same plant. You have grass, but it's all the same grass. You've got trees.
They're all the same.
They're all the same trees. They're either locust,
maple,
or they're maple, or they're sycamore, or the evil bastard Dutch elm. Every plant enthusiast, they have their plant that they absolutely love, and then they have their plant that they despise. It's their bane. It's the epiphany of their existence. I mean, not the epitome, not epiphany, the epitome of their existence. And the Dutch elm is mine. You can't get rid of it. And I'm not really sure what its benefits are, other than pissing people off. Anyway, what else do we need to cover here? So let your imagination fly. Okay, it's in the principle. You're only limited. Your design is only limited by your imagination. Okay. I've successfully been designing and building for low rent. The only material that I buy is mortar, concrete, and cement. Everything else that I build with, I find for free. It's garbage. It's trash. I can go for a trash walk down by the river, fill up a trash bag, bring it home, and build out of it. And wow, I'm cleaning up the river, and I'm building really, really, really cool stuff that I can grow food out of, capture water in. I mean, why aren't we all doing it? I was inspired by Mike Reynolds to build this way. He was an architect who, before permaculture was a thing, realized that we were living unsustainably. The way we were building was unsustainable. Our architecture in America and our architecture in the world was unsustainable. And he started thinking about how we could make it sustainable. And he started experimenting with different things. His first thing he was playing around with was thermal mass. And then he started building out of garbage. It just progressed. And his whole story is a different story. Check it out, Garbage Warrior, YouTube. Awesome, awesome story. Google Earthships. Visit the Earthship Academy, Seattle. So find ways to build your infrastructure of your design for really, 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 really next to nothing. As cheaply as possible. You know, like right here, we've got one gutter on one roof edge, and it's on the short run of the roof edge. But I guarantee that if I put a 55-gallon barrel water catchment device in the downspout, all I would need is 15 minutes of rain and the thing's full. I know this for a fact. I've watched it. So there's our water source. You know, we're working on a design. There's a preliminary water source. We put a series of water catchment things in line and dress them up to look really, really, really nice, right? That's a whole lot of water using up that garden bed space that's getting watered, but it's not growing anything other than those piddly shrubs. So we shut the water off, we put water catchment in there, and then, oh, we have to deal with the sun. You know, that's going to get a lot of south-facing stuff. So containers, put containers all along in front of the water barrels. They're all interconnected. So in the summertime, we got green stuff growing up in front of the water. And in the wintertime, it's exposed to the sunlight so it doesn't freeze. Right? It's thermal mass. And it's against the wall. It's an insulative barrier now. So on the other side of the wall, that normally gets all the sunlight beating down on it, that sunlight's going to beat down on the plants, which are in front of the water barrels. The water just wants to stay at 65.8 degrees. I think that's the number, 64.8 degrees. That's where water at room temperature. I mean, water just generally, that's where it wants to be. It doesn't want to be hot. It doesn't want to be cold. It wants it right there. And so it's going to provide an insulated thermal barrier. So on the other side of that wall, it's going to be nice and cool. Which means the air conditioning units that cool the building on the inside don't have to work as hard, right? And let's take it a step further and let's put the plants that we're going to put in there, let's put something that likes crappy ass soil, and it's a vine. Any ideas? How about hops? Spokane's a great beer country. I mean, great beer city, right? We got a lot of microbreweries. So, I don't know, however many square feet that south-facing wall is, but that's a wall of hops. And we got a trickle water source that we can trickle into the hops right there. Right from the barrels. And the hops are covering the barrels. Okay? And that's just one example of site design, thinking on your feet, thinking creatively out of the box. And you know, when you're talking with the client, they're going to ask you questions. You know, what is this? How does this permaculture thing? What do you mean? How's the permaculture design better than any other landscape design? Permaculture design is better than any other landscape design because the permaculture design incorporates all aspects of the environment around. The human biology, the animal biology, the sun, the trees, the water, the cycles of the seasons, but it also the economy. You know, this permaculture design that's intended to go into this place is designed to grow food that's going to be sold at convenience stores in the food deserts at an extremely low price. And now that Spokane has the Market Garden pilot program, we'll be able to sell directly off the farm. You know, so people don't have to go to the convenience stores, which is great because people that want to buy farm direct, they can come to any neighborhood and buy farm direct, or they can go to a convenience store and use their EBT card, which is something very few other places outside of the farmers markets have the ability to do. It's making it real simple. Oh yeah, that's right. Most low-income poor folk don't go to farmers markets. It's one of the other things that permaculture designers need to think about is demographics. A lot of people get hung up on their ego trip and their little hippie trip of what it is that their design is going to do and how it's going to save the community and save the world and blah, 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 and yakety schmackety and intellectual masturbation all over the place. But the reality is they're not serving the people that they really need to be serving. And here, we're going to be serving people that really need it. They're low income. Behind you, on the other side of the fence, is a huge neighborhood of lower middle class to upper low income people just struggling to get by, you know. And if we can provide for them 10 blocks away produce that's 1/10 the price of what's being sold at Safeway, and it comes from the neighborhood that they live in, and it's organically grown. We're not certifying it organic, but it's organically grown. We create the soil, we create the dirt, we create the medium. As permaculture designers, we create the whole food system. Wow. Now we're serving the community. Now we're serving the populace. Now we're serving the low-income people who don't go to farmers markets, who don't go to the hippie stores because it's overpriced, it's out of their budget.
Giving people jobs in the community. People also make money.
Right.
They're not just getting food.
That's right, yeah.
They're making money.
That's right. Margaret's reminded me that the number one reason why we started the cooperative of Leash Along Cooperative Farm was there was an economic crisis coupled with a food crisis, and so we decided to use permaculture design to create a system to put people back to work and grow food, period.
Yeah, you're not sending them to another food bank. You're
Right.
giving them the dignity to have the option to buy their own food and also to earn money.
And the other thing is when you're a farmer, you're a king. The original kings of the planet were farmers. They weren't warriors, they weren't warlords, they weren't great architects, they weren't inventors, they weren't assholes. They were farmers. And that's the way it was. And then at some point, when the sons of farmers that were established in, quote, civilized communities in early agrarian culture took it upon themselves to be these chieftains that, you know, in hard times, rather than work cooperatively with their fellow tribespeople, they would engage in conflict and conquest, and other desires came into being, and on and on and on, and here we are today. But the original kings were farmers. You know, our currency that everybody in the down with the government, down with the dollar movement, what they fail to realize is our currency, our global economy, is based off of grain. Gold and silver were hard currency to replace the potential loss of grain. A pennyweight. That's where we get the penny from. It's a pennyweight. It was a measurement of grain. 3 pennies, 5 pennies. You know, if you go into the Bible, there's a lot of biblical references to the pennyweight. But that's where we get our currency from. It's all based off of grain. The original currency was corn. And then the yeast, it was rice. The number one global grain economy is corn. Why do you think Monsanto is trying to, like, corner the market? You know, and it's not about the GMO thing, it's about cornering the market.
Pun intended.
He who controls the spice controls the universe. You know, Frank Herbert wrote it in Dune. Okay? And that's what Monsanto is doing. They're trying to control the spice because we have corn in everything. The global economy is based on corn. But I'm digressing. So, as permaculture designers, we need to think critically without ego in our design to serve the needs of people that we might have preliminary prejudices against because of how we were raised. You know, if we were raised to think that people that go to food banks are poor and suffering and they need help and they, you know, not anybody to help, and that's not true. Oh yeah, people go to the food bank. The reason why people go to the food banks is because at some point they made really bad decisions in their life, and or were dutifully working a job for a really bad slave master and they got injured on the job and are drawing disability. And to draw disability in this country, you might as well, it's not glorious. It's not dignified. So it's not that they're, the poor people, you know, if they just had a job, you know, if they just had somebody help them out, you know, and the other honest to God's truth, a lot of people that go to the food banks are drug affected. You know, they go to the food bank because it just came down off their high, crawled out of the bush that they were under, and are hungry. And the food bank is the only place that doesn't have a prejudice, and they give the food to them for free. And that's not all food banks, okay? Certain food banks have protocols. You have rules. You can only go to a certain one in a designated area at certain times, and you can only get so much food. And, you know, so the permaculture designer in the urban environment, these are things that you need to think about. You know, where is the most impact of your permaculture design going to be? Now, our design firm is really critical of a lot of educational centers and institutions that tout permaculture, because we only see them self-serving. They only serve their own property that is owned by the, quote, teachers running the course. And it only, all the design stuff that goes on only benefits that property. There's a lot of schools and institutions that have been around for a while, like more than 10 years, that have produced a lot of students. And I don't see a dramatic impact in my urban environment. And I live in a small urban environment, okay? Like, there's crazy shit going on in Detroit by a football player. And
crazy cool stuff.
You know, but where I'm living, for the number of people that have graduated these, quote, institutions and learned how to do permaculture, there's no impact and there's no result. So they're failing the system. The overall human system is being failed by these individuals who are only self-serving their own properties, their own institutions, their own visions and their own goals. So, and we're critical of that. We're very critical of that, because we founded our design firm with no grant funding. We're starting a farm with no grant funding, no startup capital. We just started working. Because in America, that's the beautiful thing about this country. This country, if you work, if you just start working, you become successful. That's all you have to do. But at some point, people forgot how to work. Okay? I came into permaculture from abject homelessness. Just a little digression into the background of why I have the opinion that I have. I was homeless 5.5 years ago, and I had a friend of mine, my Tai Chi instructor, helping me out, but the caveat for him helping me out was I had to take this permaculture design course and learn permaculture. I had no clue as to what it was. I didn't know what self-sustainability was. I didn't know what a closed-loop self-managed system was. I didn't know what a swale was. Hugel bed? You know, if I was quizzed on it, I would have lost. But I took this design course, and what the design course did was it synergized a lot of core sciences that I was interested in: biology, astronomy, geology, environmental restoration, environmental sciences, you know, social dynamics. How do we deal with urban blight? How do we deal with delinquent, quote, delinquent youth? It's not delinquent youth, they're bored kids with bad parents, okay? Because the bad parents had bad parents. And the only reason why they're bad parents is at one time they were bored kids too. Okay, that's the cycle. And as a permaculture designer, that's the thing that we need to look at. When we look at when we look at ecological history of the landscape, we need to look at the social history of the landscape as well. Outside of the urban environment, that social history really doesn't apply too much. It's what tribes moved to the area and everything, if you want to look at it that way. But in an urban environment, when you're looking at generational demographics, it's each generation had its own crap. You know, my wife and I's parents, they grew up with this thing called the civil defense, right? See, the Civil Defense Authority, and that generated a lot of paranoia, and there's a lot of leftover latent apathy because of it. And a lot of people think that the man's going to shut you down and Big Brother's going to come in and you're going to get arrested or you're going to get taken, and that's a bunch of bunk. Been doing this for 5 years. Been beating the system for 5 years. Invented technology that allows a house to come off the grid. Still around. Dealing with poor people. Well, dealing with the people that need to be dealt with. I can't say that they're poor because that's an assessment and an assumption. So, we're going to wander over, enough with the rant, we're going to wander over to the plot that we're going to be basically in a couple weeks doing an intensive design for the purpose of presenting to a banker, and so that I don't have to yell over the lawnmower. I think we'll take a bit of a pause, drink some water, and then right over there we'll gather up in the shade and we'll talk about, you know, kind of the intro to site design for this small plot. And it's only a small little, probably 1,000 square foot plot, but there's key things that we need to pay attention to. And you know, when you're dealing with urban site design, these are things that you need to look at. So we'll end it there and meet over there in about 10 minutes. Okay. So here's here behind me. Here behind me is the plot that we're intending on potentially doing a design for. There's 2 other places on the property that we may be doing the design to build workshops on. One's 7,500 square feet and the other one's just over 6,500 square feet. So if you notice, you'll hear on the audio of the camera, you'll hear a buzz behind me, and that's one of the thermal exchange units. For as long as that thing runs, it sucks kilowatts of power a minute. Basically, I joke about it. So one of the things of the design that we'd be doing for this plot and putting the water storage over there, for feeding this over here, is we could also be hearing a lot less of that. And that's one of the potential outcomes of the successful design. So immediately, you know, being when we first come onto the site, one of the things that we're going to look at is just doing an immediate visual assessment. And there's a lot of rocky soil, and it's due to the geography of the landscape. We're in the riverbed. The Spokane River is just right over there. We have a lot of riverbed stones, and whenever you find fill this small, you know, stones that are polished and this small, it's safe to bet that wherever the environment was, there was water running through it, or somebody brought it in. We learned from the manager that this area has been recently plumbed with sprinklers. When we first partnered up with Police Lawn, this was all bone dry. It was a complete basically bare dirt patch with gravel. And when we had a conversation with the manager, he was thinking goats. So we were contemplating goat pens, duck ponds, stuff like that. But right now, it's things have changed, the rules have changed, and so that those design ideas and concepts have gone out the window. That's why this is one of the freeform, up for grabs, designed to build plots. So we've got the gravel, and a lot of people will be like, "Oh man, gotta dig through the gravel. It's all the gravelly stones." Yay! We got. I mean, this is awesome. This is great.
Do you know how much it costs to buy rock?
Yeah, it's. I mean, we got like $4,000, $5,000 saved in gravel here. Now, how are we gonna get the gravel? Dig it out, run it through a hand sifter, and separate the stones into different sizes. What do we need the gravel for? A lot of things. I use it in my leaf systems. That's how I get most of the stone for the leaf, is I replace into the ground all the stone that comes out of the ground so that I don't have to purchase stuff and bring it in. One of the integral flaws that a lot of designers do is they think of bringing in outside resources into an area, and this environment right here produces enough biomass that, managed well, we can build all of our garden beds and get most of our biomass needs met just right off of the site. For example, keep the camera on me, but turn around and look behind you at that Dutch elm tree. Now that's a fully mature, super healthy Dutch elm tree. Now you see the canopy of it, and if you look through the canopy, you see all the green. And it's not just on the outside of the tree, that from a distance, like when we look at that red maple down there, all you see is the outside of the tree. Well, there's biomass throughout the whole tree. There's leaves all the way in to the trunk on a good healthy tree. And you know, probably once dried, is probably a ton worth of biomass right there, just in the leaf litter alone. Now, if we were to go through and limb out all the dead limbs of that tree, well, there's at least one decent hugel bed. Okay? So, limbing out the tree, that'd be a day's worth of work. The leaves, you just gotta wait for fall and rake them up as they fall. The apartment manager, he has a problem with all the leaf litter falling into his swimming pool. So as designers, what would be a method of us to come up with a system where we can cover the pool to catch the leaf litter in the fall? Make it a lot easier on the system all the way around. So, you know, that pile of brush that was right next to us, now, as it is standing right there, it's illegal. It's a brush pile, and they have 30 days by city code to move it if somebody was to call it in. But if somebody was to go through and limb all the limbs and take all the trunks and line them up in neat little tightly packed rows and stuff cardboard in there and pack all the leaf covered branches on it and tight, and then cover it with even more leaves, you got a hugel bed, and it's permitted by the city. It's allowed, and you just keep adding more biomass. So with this site, this little small plot, the majority of the materials that we need to build the garden beds and the infrastructure are already here. The other part of the infrastructure that's already here is the garbage. If we were to ask all of the different units to contribute the recyclable materials, rinse out their cans and their bottles and put them in containers that we provide, and we manage the containers properly, within a week to 2 weeks we would have all the building materials that we need to build ponds, to build all sorts of micro ecosystems in this one small plot, even more. Okay? We asked them to donate phone books that they don't use, donate magazines that they don't use, donate junk mail that they don't use. We'd have all the paper that we need for making fibercrete and mortar mache. So, in this plot back here, when we come onto it, there's all this stuff that's going, on in the background, and now we're going to do our just initial preliminary walkthrough. We've got a rich source of gravel and rocks that we can use for backfill in our streams, our ponds. We can use it as aggregate fill in walls. We can polish it up and use it as mosaics. We can use it decoratively. Most importantly, though, the number one most important use of this material right here is thermal mass. This is better than a brick, man. This is made by nature. So we got good thermal mass. Now we can dictate what kind of environment we want here by moving the thermal mass, creating heat pockets and cold pockets. We have a beautiful south-facing wall, but we've also got this Dutch elm tree that shades a portion. So we've got ecosystems that are in direct conflict with one another within the small place. We have right there in the garden bed, it's sun blasted, it's sun baked, it's probably really super sandy, and if I was to run my fingers through it, I bet I would find cat shit. I'm pretty sure, like all the free roaming cats within 5 blocks of this place, that's their bathroom right there. They meet and greet right there. Got to keep that in mind when you're coming in and remediating soil. What kind of biology craps here? I'm pretty sure if you were to walk up and down the alley, you'd find human crap as well, because homeless people and transients like to crap in alleys. I don't know why they don't go to a bathroom in a gas station.
Probably because it's like 12 blocks away.
Ba-doom cha. Good job, Madge. We've got ecosystems in direct conflict. Direct opposition, not conflict, but opposition. In permaculture, conflict is beneficial in permaculture design. Okay? In permaculture design, when you have conflict, what winds up happening is all the rough parts break off and things smooth out. And those rough parts become aggregate for something else. So, in a permaculture design, a little bit of conflict is a good thing. Too much conflict, it's not a permaculture design. Opposition and conflict. So, because there's the opposite is always true rule. So, we have the sun blasted, and then right here up front, you bring the camera and look here, we got a nice cool shade cat box. So, we got cool shade cat box, we got hot sun blasted cat box. We got biology in here that's telling us that it's really hard to grow. This is not nutritionally healthy soil. How do I know that? Well, I'm looking at the dandelion, and it's one of the most resilient plants. And this dandelion right here in the shade, it's like going, I'm small, help me, right? The knapweed's having a hard time in here. The foxtails is having a hard time in here.
Lettuce.
The wild lettuce is having a hard time in here. About the only thing that seems to be doing okay in here in this environment is the buttonweed, and that's because buttonweed's a really good desert-loving dwelling plant. Loves,
And even that's not doing very well.
and it's pretty small. Not a whole lot of nutritional value to the soil here. So how are we going to? It's one of the things in this design. How are we going to increase the nutritional value of the soil without bringing stuff in? Taking a look at the site, we've got structures that are not movable, and you can't have anything in front of them. Satellite dishes you can't have anything in front of.
Windows.
And those thermal exchange units, you can't have anything within 3 feet around them. That bush right there is poorly placed because, well, it keeps getting cut back from a thermal exchange unit, which causes it to coppice, which is causing it to be really, really, really thick. If you look at the base, it's really thick on the one side close to the exchange unit from where it's coppiced a lot. And on the other side, you just see like a few branches, you know, nice, big, thick, healthy branches, where on the side closest to the machine, you see a bunch of little smaller, thicker branches. So, you know, that would be something that we would ask the property owner if we could take it out and turn it into a garden bed, part of the, you know, part of the hugel system. Could we move it? That's a good question. It's what would its energy return be if we moved it?
Shade.
What guarantee do we have that it's going to live in its new environment that we move it to? What guarantee do we have that the other biology that lives in that environment, that's made friends and friendly relationships with all the other biology in that environment, what guarantee do we have that it's going to like its newcomer? Because as permaculture designers, we have to think about the relationships that these plants have made with one another. Okay, below the ground, within the root interface and the mycelium interface. Okay, there's a whole other exchange system going on. And this Dutch elm tree that I hate, well, it's supporting a lot of other biology around it, below ground. And it's had friendly relationships with all this other biology because they've coexisted for so long that they've developed over years this relationship. So to tear something out and move it and plop it in somewhere else, you know, transplanting, in my opinion, as a designer, transplanting, only do it when absolutely, 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 absolutely necessary. Work with what's there. If there's nothing there, then bring something in. We're not rehabilitating a 50-acre to 1,000-acre farm field that was monoculturally grown. We're dealing with an already biodiverse ecosystem in an urban environment. And so we have to honor and respect the relationships that these plants have already established with each other before we come on as designers and put in our design. So to move that plant, I would be much more happier to tear it out of the ground and turn it into a hugel bed where all of the bacteria and fungus and all of the other relationships that we don't see are still going to exist in this environment, just in a different form. It's going to be transmuted. It's not going to be this tree, it's going to be a hugel bed. And I would only do that at the point of where I have the infrastructure ready to receive the hugel bed, because as soon as you take that tree out, even though it's in a bad location, it's doing two real important biological functions. It's respirating carbon dioxide and other gases out of the air, producing oxygen, and it's fixing carbon in water.
And shade.
In the form of biomass. Okay? The two most important functions any plant does. Okay? That's the other thing as permaculture designers, even if it's a noxious weed, even if it's something that's completely undesirable, as a plant, it is respirating carbon dioxide and other gases out of the atmosphere and producing oxygen, and it is, you know, fixing carbon and storing water in the form of living biomass. And as soon as you kill that, you take away one part of the cycle. And then over time, the water evaporates out of it. That's why I like putting them into hugel beds. I mean, I take them out while they're still laden with sap. Maybe let them, you know, dry out for a little bit to where I know it's not going to coppice, because it'll start to coppice and then it'll die off. And then I immediately put it into hugel. Successfully been doing it for 3 years. Built 7 hugel beds. Right now I've got 3 hugel beds that are producing food. Okay? So that's what I would do with it. I would not transplant it. Now as a designer, we've taken a look at what's here, see what kind of plants are here, and now it's a matter of what do we want to bring in? What is it that the people around the area, the other biology around the area, what is it they would desire in this place? You know, there's things that I want to do. I want to bring in all sorts of radical stuff. What about things that are like really super familiar with kids? You know, like strawberries. Put a strawberry patch in here.
Herbs.
Lots of herbs, things that kids could pick and eat, interact with, learn from, cook with. You know, a lot of culinary stuff. Be really, really, really fun. So it's a matter of what is it that we want to bring into this environment? What is it that is going to be most beneficial to, you know, the biology here? What are the things that they're going to like? And that's going to be stuff that when we do the design to build workshops, we're going to go through those steps and those processes where we're going to do an actual interview. We're going to walk through and we're going to interview different people at the apartment complex and make them aware that we're going to be potentially putting in a beautiful permaculture designed high production gardenscape as an example to other urban permaculture designers of what can be accomplished in the city using this design method properly and appropriately.